All right, welcome everybody to the October Technical Training Meeting. Good to see everybody. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry, one sec. For some reason, the view is messed up on my end. Hold on. All right.
All right, this is our agenda for today. Makara is going to grace us with some announcements and some training. And Kyia's got a Kahoot for us to participate in on.
You got it there.
Something, one of those words. And the main topic then that we're going to be talking about today is quality control inspections. So I'll have a lot of the portion of that, but Kyia will also be contributing. Any questions on any of that?
Hello, folks. So again, just a reminder, we have our upcoming EA 101 training on October 21st to the 24th. I'm probably going to be setting out an agenda and what you'll need to bring for that class to coordinators, just so I can get a final count so I can start putting meal requests and all that. And just a reminder to try to keep your WAP reports updated on all your certifications. I know I've reached out to some folks because I saw there was some expired ones. Some of you have already done it, and some of you are just waiting for classes and opportunities. So just keep that in mind. And it looks like we have a link to one of the potential trainings that you could take from. I believe that's the Rocky Mountain Continuing Education thing that you would typically take for the lead inspector class. But they also have other stuff like asbestos if you were interested in having someone take that as well. And just a reminder, our tentative date for the spring training conference is still May 13th to the 14th. So just keep that in your mind as we plan into the new year.
All right. We're going to play Kahoot. So let me swap my screen. All right, if you've never played Kahoot before, go to www.kahoot.it, and or you can use the screen to get into this QR code, and you play it on your phone. Sometimes it has music, but I don't think it's going to play the music today. But it'll play it on your phone. I think the cap on this is 40, but I don't think we have that many people in this class. So we will press play soon here. I'll wait till a few more people want to join. All right, got like 5 more seconds. And then I'll start it. All right, we started. All right, what is the role of a QCI in weatherization? I've changed the options on your screen to add the text so that you didn't have to necessarily read this screen to play. Let me know, give me some feedback if you like that or if you preferred the other version, because it might be too much on a phone. Just let me know. Got 5 more seconds. All right. I think some of you saw this and maybe didn't read the whole sentence. If you read it, it says inspect work quality to ensure clients get the windows they asked for. That's not what our program does, right? So the correct answer is inspect work in the audit field and files to ensure standards are met. And we'll go over that more today as well. Nice job. Also, the faster that you answer, the more points you get. What does SWS stand for in 10 CFR 440? Nice. I think I got a few of you guys on these. I was a little tricky, but it is standard work specifications. So that's something that DOE talks about a lot, and there's a lot of standard work specifications that are highlighted in our field guide. That was what the photo was. So if you've never seen our field guide, go to our WAP resource page and you can see all of our standard work specifications with examples of how to install things correctly. But there is also separate standard work specifications that we try to make sure to include in everything else. So nice job, Jonathan. And QCI notices a water heater blanket was not installed to SWS or field guide standards. What should they do? Nice, most of you got that it's all the answers. So technically none of these other answers are wrong, but it is actually all of them. So you should be asking questions to find the root cause, whether that's asking questions of like the auditor, work order, field crew, looking for like why maybe something was an issue. It could have been that in the field crew notes that there was an issue that they couldn't install because there was like a random pipe or something. So you always want to ask questions first and then document the issue found in the QCI checklist and the issues tracker. And then also provide training on proper SWS and field guide standards, and then follow up on that training. So all of those are things that you should do as a QCI when there's an issue that comes up. Nice job. Sticking strong, Jonathan. True or false, QCI is not required to test a gas oven during closeout inspection. I really hope to trick most of you on this one. I'm just kidding. I don't want to trick you on this one. You should know. All right. False. Every time you need to test. You need to test in, test out. So sometimes the weatherization process won't necessarily affect a gas oven, but if the QCI or if the auditor had incorrectly tested that oven, it's really a good idea for you to have tested it so that you can compare and make sure that they tested it correctly. All diagnostic stuff, especially health and safety, is really important for you to test as a QCI. Ooh, got you, Jonathan. Okay, let's go next. All right, what issues found during QCI inspection are required to be added to the agency's issues tracker? I didn't do some good English on some of those answers, but that's all right. There was a word limit, so I'm sure I just didn't notice. All right, good job. Yeah, so trick question. All the issues should be considered added to the issues tracker. Now there are like small ones that maybe you could take care of that it was just like they had fat thumbed something that you can just mark on your form, be like, hey, just be a little bit more careful about fixing this. But so you don't have to go into super detail and do like a whole training on them just fat fingering something. But it is really important for you to consider all of the issues and add them to your issues tracker so that you can then track what trainings are needed and do a trainings needs analysis as a QCI and as an agency. Nice job, Tom. Mongoose. Stumpy, who is it? Who wants to take and
I'll
Jonathan,
take ownership of that.
you'll take ownership. Nice job. I think you won the last Kahoot too, or was it the one before that?
I've won another one. I feel like you guys need to start handing out prizes or something.
I know. It's all about bragging rights. Who's Mongoose?
Okay, true.
Give a shout
That'd be
out.
me.
Nice job. Yeah, we got to give the shout out. Do we even have a Tom on this call? I don't see one listed. Who's Tom?
Guess he'll stay anonymous.
Okay, you can stay anonymous. That's fine. Don't take your credit. Anyways, all right, so we'll move on. All right, take it away.
Yeah, sorry, there is one boring slide. We're just gonna read more or less off of the slide, but this is the meat and potatoes of why we do a QCI. Every DOE WAP job or unit reported as a completed unit must receive a final inspection, ensuring that all the work meets the minimum specifications outlined in the SWS in accordance with 10 CFR 40. In addition, the QCI must include an assessment of the original audit and confirm that the measures called for on the work order were appropriate and in accordance with the grantee audit procedures, which is our guidelines that we have developed and our field guide, excuse me, and protocols approved by the DOE, by DOE. Or as Kyia likes to do with all these memes, that is the definition of that basically is that's our finish line. That's when that job is completed. And as this poor biker is experiencing, we probably shouldn't celebrate or count our victory until we cross that finish line.
That's awesome.
All right, and then I also wanted to highlight like Anchor, really like what our program is. It's the weatherization work does change lives, but it only does that if we do the work to make our work work. Okay, I know that's a mouthful, but we can't change lives unless we actually have good quality work. And some of those considerations that DOE specifically calls out for is like operating in accordance with federal regulations and program guidelines. Work performed is of sufficient quality, because you can't get any savings from that if you don't have sufficient quality. And then no fraud, waste, or abuse is happening. And then we also do training needs analysis to ensure continued improvement. And all of that ensures good stewardship of public funds and is what can help change lives. So if we don't go the last mile or the last foot, we take a mile to get all the way through everything. And every stage has a lot of work. And if we don't finish that last few inches, we don't get across that finish line and we don't end up changing lives, you know? And so it's really important for us to have this last mile really, or this last foot of work completed before we complete units, but also just so that we can actually change lives. A QCI is the last one to see the job unless us state monitors come out, and we only come out to 5% of your jobs. So the QCI goes to 100% of those jobs. You're the last one that if there's something that maybe we did as an organization, or there's something that maybe we missed, you are the last one to be able to find that. You're the last one that puts the stamp on it and says, this house is safe and it meets all of these guidelines, meaning they have a safe and operable heating system in the house. And like, we're not backdrafting our water heaters, things like that, that make sure that this house is going to be comfortable. Does anybody have any questions about what we just covered? Or even comments? QCI is a super important role. Every single step of this process is a very important role. And since we're talking about QCI today, of course, we want to highlight that finish line role because it is super important. All right, on-site quality control inspection. So there's two main roles that a QCI does. One of them is an on-site inspection to check quality control. And then the other is a lot of paperwork, right? To finish up and tie up those loose ends. So I was going to talk about a little bit of the on-site inspection. So I'm going to bring it out to the crowd. Who sees, you can write it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Who sees maybe an issue? If you were on a QCI inspection, what does this job look good? Is there any questions, concerns about this photo? There's a hint. There is an issue in this photo. Somebody share.
We're gonna wait here till somebody answers.
The electric lines aren't insulated with pipe wrap.
Sorry, what did you say?
Vapor barrier is not fastened all the way.
It's not sealed to the wall.
There's
Yeah,
no
but-
house wrap under.
Okay,
over
yes,
the insulation.
that's good. Why do you like, if we were going to look a little bit closer, if you could see from this photo,
There's debris under the vapor barrier.
potentially, right? Maybe I'll zoom in so you can see.
It looks like it's wet.
Yeah, it's
Say
wet.
it again, Waldo.
It looks like there's water like leaking down that wall and under the vapor barrier.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a ton of water pooling on this vapor barrier. If the vapor barrier is working because there wasn't any water on top of the vapor barrier. So all of this humidity looking, it's actually the vapor barrier is working and that it's blocking that humidity from further like coming up. But if you were to continue to zoom in, this is where the issue is. It's at the very top. And you don't see it as easily because, you know, some crawl spaces are kind of gross and there's a lot of dust and crusties that it could have been a past issue. But the fact that there's actual water in live and the whole wall was pretty wet when I touched it, that means that's an active issue that's happening and it was pulling this vapor barrier away. And so it wasn't sealed anymore. And so you really need to watch for that because you need to be protecting these measures that you're installing. And this was the culprit, was that there was a little pin-sized hole in a water line that would need to get fixed. Does everybody understand, like, when you're going in this space, like how you do have to take a second glance at something and go and investigate, like, oh, something doesn't quite look right. Maybe I need to go look over there and like take a photo. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Has anybody seen this before? you can see that like it could be a little bit hard when you're walking, like going in a crawl space to just do a quick inspection that like, oh, you could miss that if you didn't actually go around the whole crawl space and spot something.
Well,
So,
if it was an actual pinhole, it probably took quite a bit of time for that to develop. So you're not, it depends on how long, before the QCI gets there, if that's actually going to show up. If you're saying it was an actual little pinhole,
mhm.
that's going to be a tough catch until it's stayed there long enough to build up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's-
it can be a tough catch, but if you actually go into a house and you see something like this, what do we do about it?
What would be your next step, Mike, if you went into this crawl space and you found this?
Well, I would come back and discuss it and see what can be done or what we're allowed to do. And I don't know where the responsibility would lie as far as what our money would allow us to do. That would be, I haven't seen this a great deal, so I'm not really sure what route we would take. I would probably talk with everyone and find out what we need to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
Kyia, Turner, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, this would be justification for an incidental repair to fix this water line because it's going to conserve your vapor barrier here.
Jumping in here with a quick note, this is a state correction post-meeting. In this section of the discussion, some information was stated incorrectly based on program guidance. This discussion that we're having here about this particular issue, this would have been an acceptable HSM, would not be an acceptable IRM because there's no ECM measure that we'd be protecting. IRMs must be linked to an energy conservation measure or an ECM. All incidental repairs must be linked to ECMs. And in this scenario, there was not any insulation, as you'll hear, that we had installed as a measure. We were simply just talking about how this would be something we need to address as a health and safety measure because it is impacting the other health and safety measures that we have installed in this home that are validated by an energy conservation measure. But IRMs can't have multiple steps removed from an ECM like HSMs can. So always we recommend looking and referencing program guidance, and we kind of mentioned it at the end of this recording and corrected that, but just wanted to jump in here real quick to make sure that there was no confusion.
Yes, that is correct. And to one of the things that Mike said, where this was a pinhole and it would take a while for it to show up, it was going on for a while. My guess is that when the installers put that butyl tape on the wall was already wet.
Can I say something real quick?
Yep, go.
Can't use IRMs for HSM. You got to use it as towards the ECM. So the IRM will be put towards the insulation, not the vapor barrier.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
That's correct. Thank you.
And it
So-
wouldn't be over your minor repair, so it'd be a major, so you defer.
Is
To what Isaac just said, I think I have taught exactly that in the past. I want to clarify though, it's okay if you have an incidental repair that is going to ensure that a health and safety measure does not fail.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
And it's kind of like what's the game where it's like 7 layers of Kevin Bacon or whatever, right? I'm gonna say it wrong.
7 degrees.
Yeah, 7 degrees. Thank you.
Is that in the guidelines just yet or not?
So it's okay if there's 2 layers back to your ECM. Like the reason you install a health and safety measure is because you've installed an energy conservation measure. Right? In this case, we're going in and we're installing an energy conservation measure, which is air sealing. We're going to tighten up the house. Because we're tightening up the house, we're going to install a health and safety measure, which is we're going to put a vapor barrier down to ensure good, clean air quality, which is part of the ASHRAE standard. And then while we're trying to put in that health and safety measure, if there's something that is going to cause that health and safety measure to fail, then we can do an incidental repair to prepare that or prevent that from happening.
Jumping in here again, just to reiterate, it's not the incidental repair, it's that you can have an HSM or a NAM to help fix anything that's going to impact that HSM. So it should be included in the cost of that HSM or have an additional measure like a NAM.
Does it say somewhere in the guidelines that we can do that, or
That we have
exactly what you just
7
said?
degrees to Kevin Bacon. You need to add that. No, it should, but I'll let these guys go on. I'll see if I can find your reference. I'll drop it in the chat in a
I
second.
just wondered. Okay.
The other piece that someone had mentioned is that it might be over the minor repair cost limit. I wouldn't guess that this one little pipe would be over the 1,500. I know that plumbers can be a bit expensive, but I'm sure that this would be under the minor repair.
Well, don't you have to include it? Probably gonna, if it's gone that far, it's probably wrecked the insulation. And the insulation won't dry out, so we're gonna be, adding other insulation. So there's other costs that are gonna be involved there too, so.
Something else I wanted to note about this photo is that this is in a crawl space. Do you notice that the ceiling is insulated? That wall insulation isn't necessary. This wasn't us that had installed it. This was actually the previous builder. But this wall insulation, we wouldn't have to necessarily worry about that piece because the ceiling insulation. So you're looking at like maybe 1 little square foot of insulation at the top there.
Okay, I was thinking that we installed.
Yeah, no, we did not install that insulation, none of it in that space.
But you're absolutely right. When
Mhm.
when you're looking at this, you want to be considering all of that.
Yes.
If it exceeds a threshold, you may be looking at a deferral. If it doesn't exceed a threshold, then it's something you want to repair.
Yeah.
That's why we
Yeah.
usually confer, I bring it back to Tina and we talk with everyone and find out, what we're allowed to do. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things too is that this is a QCI inspection. So you'd already done all this work in the house. That would really suck to have to do a deferral. In a scenario like this, I would highly recommend contacting us if it's over that minor repair cost limit, because then you can see if we can do a case by case or something to try to work around this issue if you can't figure it out. All right. Any more questions, comments, concerns? Sweet. Also,
Can I ask one
no.
more question
Oh,
on
yes.
that? I'm sorry.
Yep, go for
When
it.
when you say the pinhole, there was a pinhole there. That's pretty hard to find. So was it after you had somebody come in and check plumbing and find out that it was
No,
a pinhole?
I found it because of the water that was
Oh,
existing.
okay. I just wondered. Okay.
Yeah, no, I found it because of the water that was there, because I went and
Okay.
investigated. That was the whole point of me kind of bringing this up, is that I investigated, and if I was the QCI on this job and this was there, what would I do? I would be investigating it the way I just showed you guys. I'd be like, one, I'm going to go look around the whole crawl to make sure, because we installed the measure. I want to make sure it's sealed. And then if I come across something that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look at that. Why is there water under there? Because I usually notice water underneath vapor barriers, and so I just inspect to make sure that it's not something that like might be harming the measure. And then in this scenario, because it was pulling away that vapor barrier, it's something that it needs to protect that measure that we installed. The next piece is add to agency issues tracker and QCI report. This is something you should be adding to your report. And Rogers will go over the paperwork piece of that.
Yeah, you forgot to turn in your paperwork last night. Mr. Turner did a technical meeting back in 2019 of reviewing an energy audit. If you guys want to watch that video for some reference, that's still good material. The QCI form that we're using now is quite a bit different, more detailed, but the the information is still relevant. So if you guys want to, I'll go back for a second, just in case anybody wants to copy down that web address right there. Can't hear you, Kyia. You're muted.
We can also search on, you can also search on our YouTube channel if you, you can also search on the YouTube channel, like on itself, because they're all in playlists. So we have all of our technical meetings in a playlist, and you can just go back, scroll back to the January one.
And this is the title of that video.
All right, moving on.
Oh,
This is you. So
Yeah.
in our last technical meeting, in our last technical meeting, I mentioned that Rogers was going to kind of go over a few things because he wasn't able to be there, and specifically updates that he made. So he'll be reviewing the new form that he created. So do you want me to give you control, Rogers?
I guess go to the next slide and I'll explain that since you already, I was going to do this after, but that's okay. I'll do the monitoring tool updates really quickly before we go into the QCI form. Yes. If you can, let me present now, Kyia. All right. The first one on there was the audit photos, correct?
Yeah.
So that is being scored differently now. Prior to this year, this was more or less an all or nothing, meaning if you missed one of the photos in the required 14 that we have, you didn't get this item for that client. But now it's based on a percentage. So out of the 14 photos that would be required for each and every client file, for example, if you missed 5 of the required 14 photos, you have an error rate of 0.36. That's how you're going to be getting scored this year during monitoring. Is there any questions on that? This will help improve. This is going to make your scores look slightly better. Questions, comments, concerns? Nothing. Crickets?
The other one was QCI review.
Yep. And then this item here, did the QCI conduct an adequate review of the audit file? This is going to be scored a little bit differently as well. It's going to be a little more harsh on you QCIs. For example, there are a lot of line items with AO1, AO1-1 through 17. If any of these items are marked as a no, this is scored similar to that audit line item or the photos line item where, excuse me, not feeling well this morning. It's a percentage based out of the 15 audit categories that we're scoring you on. I know that's probably confusing. I didn't explain that well, but another way to explain that is if you miss any one of these items in A01, it's going to count against your review of the audit score a certain percentage. Is there any questions on that? Sorry, that's more for.
So you're basing this formula on 17, right? Is that how the score's coming? The percentage?
15.
Oh,
15.
15, excuse
Yeah,
me.
so I guess a better way to explain it is all of section A01 is essentially one portion of this score. 7%.
It's not going to drastically change your score in the sense that that's only one score that we score the QCI of. The QCI still has its own section, but
Yeah.
they do get scored on the audit section for if there's mistakes. So
The difference of how I was doing it before is each one of these was a small percentage of this score here.
yeah, it used to be out of 52. Now it's out of 15. For the 1 point that you get. This
It's
is
going to give you, I feel like it's going to give you a more accurate depiction of what your QCI is actually reviewing. So if they're missing things on A01, which is the input report, or A02, which is your recommended measure report, that's going to show up a little more visibly. Does that make sense, Tina?
Yeah.
Okay. QCIs, be aware, is probably going to affect your scores that you get in monitoring a little. So be on your game. Any other questions? All right. Having said that, let's go through a few things on the updates I've made to the QCI form. So I'm going to ask some of you some questions on how we're going to fill this this form out. So someone from Bragg, where do I find a client's eligibility date? Do I have anybody from Bragg here?
You get on the good old heat certificate for the date.
Good. So I'm going to go here to my client's heat certificate. Don't worry, this is an actual client, but I've redacted all their PII. So right here, we have our eligibility date. So we're going to fill that in. Someone from Yucca, where do we get information on when a home was built?
You can get that information from the what was it called? The
If you want to just give me the alphanumeric form
like
number, that would work too.
like a IO4 is that? Anyway. Or IO3, there it is. Yeah, I'd have to read. But I'm thinking like parcel websites or something like that.
There you go. So here we go. This is the parcel information for this house. You can see it's built in 1997. So one of the, I'll put that number in a second, but one of the features I wanted to show is based on the year that we put in here, I've filled a lot of this form out for us already just for time's sake, because I didn't think we'd have enough time to go through each of these items. And like I said, Turner did a video back in 2019 of the audit review, which would cover all this anyway. But just to highlight a couple of boxes, section A08 is based on lead. Once we fill in the date for a house on this form, it's good if it's beyond 1977. In this case, we're 1997. It's going to check some boxes for us on section A8. So if we're past that lead threshold date, it's going to give us a couple of these boxes it'll check for you as not applicable. What else can we, was that Alan that just answered? from Yuka?
Yes.
Our next box on here is primary heating fuel. Alan, is there a spot on this form where we can also see what our heating system fuel is? Is Alan still there?
Well, yeah. Sorry, you're asking what the primary heating fuel is?
Yep.
Is it saying it on typical heating natural gas? There it is. Yeah.
So we're going to fill that in there.
I do appreciate the drop down option.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to type that in every time, so I did notice that.
Sorry, I forgot about that. That is a drop down option now. So instead of having to type that in, it's going to, you just have your list of choices there. Is there anything I'm missing out of that list that you guys run into?
I don't think they run it into it very often, but I would just follow whatever's on the fuel list because coal is not on there. And there was one other, I think, but yeah, I think overall you got most of them.
Okay, I'll make sure that I add coal.
Yeah, don't be hating coal miners.
No hating. Waldo, was there something else that you said?
No, I can't think of anything. We honestly don't use much more than just natural gas or propane.
Okay. And then same thing's going to go in this case on this house. For time's sake, I'm just going to fill some of these out so that we're not going past time today. Someone from MAG other than Waldo, where do I find what document is best to find my work start date in general? Alan or Jaden from MAG?
Do the AO3 client information, I think.
AO3?
That's where I get it on ours. That's just when the
Lower
auditors,
door.
their collection form.
Yeah, generally we've advised to use the date on the blower door.
Yeah, use that too.
Sometimes, once in a while, you're not able to do a blower door the first day that you're there on an audit. But if that's the case, I'm sure you've got some documentation saying so. In this case, we'll use that date. And then while we're on this form, we can also get our blower door information. And then obviously we're going to use.
Hey, Matt, can I interrupt you for a sec?
Go for it.
I do put in decimals when I'm filling out, like, say, like the spreadsheets on Google, but the BWR doesn't let you put those in. So I guess I'm just pointing that out. That's not, yeah, I don't know
Let me do this
how to
then.
report that sometimes. Okay, yeah, I was just being curious on how to report it sometimes because, yeah, like sometimes I honestly, like, do you guys recommend rounding or would you recommend just cutting off the decimal? Like, what do you?
Yeah, you just round up or down, it doesn't matter.
Round to the
Okay.
nearest whole number.
Yeah, one blower door CFM is not gonna make or break a audit, so.
Hey, I just want to make sure I get a good score. All right. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I just really wanted to know that because that's always kind of bothered me. Sometimes, yeah, a lot of times I round, but sometimes I just cut the number off, and so I've just been curious on, yeah, what you guys thought about that.
I guess I didn't realize that the BWR doesn't let you put in decimal points for the blower door, but that makes sense. But yeah, it's a simple formatting I can do on this form, fix that. So if you want to put your decimal in there, this will just round it up for you.
Yeah, cool.
So similar to our year built on here, once I put in my blower door information, this is going to check a box for me on production if I reach my infiltration reduction goal. You might notice this house in particular, we only got a 24% reduction. If we were to meet our reduction goal of either 30 or 50, based on what our audit number is, if we meet that goal, it's going to check that yes box for you on your production section. In this case, we didn't meet our goal, so I'm going to check no.
Also notice how it automatically puts in information into the notes box.
I did that already.
Oh, no, you did it? Okay, because I thought that you, okay, never mind. Ignore that.
Wait,
For
yeah,
time
can I
sake.
actually comment on that too also?
Yep.
When the first question that it asks is, did the crew meet their infiltration reduction goal? You would say no, because in this case you got 24%. But the next one asks, air sealing opportunities properly prioritized and identified. Would you?
You can clarify that in your notes. So
I guess what I'm asking is, like, the answer would still be no, like, because
answer
you're
still
answering.
no.
Okay.
So the whole reason for this form is to improve our processes, right? It's not punitive. I don't want to take action against you guys. I want you to use this as a tool to figure out where you're lacking. If consistently you're getting a 20% reduction, there's another point of detail on here, Waldo. I don't know if you saw. Their air sealing budget was $350, but they only spent $160.
Right.
So there's money left on the table.
Right.
There's only 6% left in infiltration reduction that they need to get to reach their goal. So
Yeah, sometimes I guess where my question's coming from is that sometimes, like, say they didn't meet their air sealing goal, but they did use all their money, they did prioritize it, but then, so I sometimes answer yes and still give a description, but I guess that's what I was wanting to know is, like, if it doesn't meet one of them, then it's a no for the entire question, for the
So
entire
maybe
PO.
in that case, or in those cases, perhaps some conversation needs to happen with the auditor on developing a better infiltration reduction strategy. Maybe they're missing something.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
What do you do if you ain't got enough money though? Because I see where he's going with his conversation, but if you ain't got enough money and you feel like the crew did everything correct in order, you just put not enough money to succeed 30%.
Yeah. Document what
Put
you're.
that in the notes. It would still be a no because you didn't hit the reduction goal, but we aren't very punitive necessarily about the reduction goal unless there's some other factors where it's like you didn't use all your money, then we're going to be. But if you just write in like they used all of their money,
They followed
they followed the strategies, they did all the things they could. The house was at an ACH 5 or lower or something. So we like this like we don't have any actions or measure, like, you know, like you just write that in the notes.
Okay.
In general, they did a good job. No is more just for, did they hit that or not? And your notes are for the explanation. So.
No, yeah, that makes more sense. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Okay, we're done with that top section. I'm just going to fill this out quickly because we're down to 10 minutes, but there wasn't any intake documentation problems with this client file. As you can see, we've got some audit issues, got some production issues, but then we get to this new section, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I stole this idea from Yuka. They had a section very similar to this in that they added to their QCI forms, and I liked it, but I made some changes to it. But credit where credit's due. Good job, Yuka. This is just a tool to help you evaluate and see where maybe we can improve upon some of our testing and evaluations. So someone from Uinta Basin, I guess we're already on a document. On your blower door report, you should have somewhere where you can see the building volume. So we're going to fill those numbers in really quick. This is the closeout one. And we had the same number during at their audit. QCIs, you still need to be checking measurements on your houses, making sure, I don't care, well, I do care, but I don't want to say this the wrong way. You don't necessarily need to do a full house measurement the same as your auditor does, but you need to be spot checking them for sure.
Yeah, because let's say that you measure one wall and that wall measurement is off. Like that's a way that you can check their work, right? Is you measure at least, like when you go doing your inspection, and measure at least like 2 walls and make it random. Don't make it the exact same wall, and just compare it against whatever they got. That way that you know if they're within that 10% accuracy, and because it is possible for you to have a different building volume. And also, if there's vaulted ceilings, measure the ceiling height. Make sure that they measured the ceiling height correctly, because that's probably one of the biggest things that in volume issues is when they don't correctly calculate if there's a vaulted ceiling. So just, we're not necessarily saying you got to do the whole thing, but if you notice that one of the walls is off, you should probably go measure a few more walls to make sure that it's not crazy off, or there needs to be a recalculation.
This is also a good section for you to be checking their math. If you are checking their measurements, you should be getting the same numbers. But if you're getting different numbers here, it's going to show you that there's something off, either with their measurements or their math. Any questions so far?
Also, it's worth looking at, you should be checking their input, and I recommend after every audit finish that somebody else looks at the auditor's input before you even go to production or anything, just to confirm that they didn't fat finger something. So that's always a good way to catch it, so you don't have to catch it on QCI and have a bigger issue on your hands.
We've only got about 5 minutes left. QCIs, if you don't mind hanging around after for a few more minutes, we'll finish filling out this section, but there is another part that I want to cover before our hour is up. So for this particular,
Rogers, also, I have to, before anybody else drops off, I want to clarify. I want to say Isaac was correct and I was wrong. The guidelines do specify an IRM is only connected to an ECM. So there's still the 7 layers or whatever. Man, I'm never going to get that right. But
7 Lakers.
If you had the leak in the crawl space, you could have addressed it as a health and safety issue, and then this health and safety issue of the vapor barrier. So it really wouldn't have been an incidental repair, because Isaac's right, incidental repairs are only tied directly to ECMs, but it would have been a HSM. So sorry for the interruption.
Nope. Thank you for the clarification. So this is a list of all the measures on this particular job. This is the same as before on this QCI form, where you're going to be listing those out. You're checking to make sure all the materials charged to the job are installed and present, and then workmanship meets on each measure meets the program standards. So on this particular job, we had an issue with one of the local exhaust fans that was installed to meet ASHRAE. There was some foam that was sprayed in to help air seal around the fan, but it somehow leaked into the housing and separated the 2 pieces. So I have a picture of that really quick. So we're here doing a QCI and we find this. That's a work quality issue, correct? We want to make sure that we're listing that on here. Now we get down to our bottom section. This is where I feel there's some confusion or maybe just not a clear enough explanation. This section should be all the deficiencies that you're finding in the intake section, the audit section, the production section where you're checking all these documents before you conduct the on-site visit, as well as any measure issues like the one we found with the fan in this particular case. All that needs to be listed on here, along with the description of the issue. And then you're going to, if you want to work together with your audit, your production crew, come up with a resolution, and your QCI needs to initial, and all of these items need to be added to your issue tracker. R6, sorry, I'm using you as an example, but this shouldn't be a complicated process. You can simply copy and paste this information. That didn't work very well. Anyway. I'll have to figure out a better way to transpose that information, but the summary of that anyway is all of the items that you're finding on this QCI form do need to be transferred to your issue tracker, and this is what you're using as an agency to help train and find deficiencies and improve.
Rogers, you can just paste like you right click, so right click and you paste, and then it says paste special, and you just values only, and it'll take out some of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
and then
that's
the
the
reason
one.
why it's large is because you have a lot of text in the other ones. So
it's because there's multiple boxes.
oh, you have multiple spaces. Never mind then.
Are there any questions with any of that so far? And then any confusion?
What you can do, Rogers, is you can double click into the description of issues and just copy each item. Like, so double click and then you can only copy the text and then bring it over. But you'd have to do that on each box.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
When will this form be available? Today?
Say it again.
I have
when
to
would
submit it to our people, but it should be done by the end of the week or early next week. But we can send you a link to it too, but we'll have it on the website.
If you'd like to start test driving this, send me an email and I'll provide you a copy. Any other questions at this point?
I will put the date that it gets posted on the website so that you can have the most accurate date of when it was available to you to use. So
Okay, so just to clarify, this is not available in any way to us until you guys let us know.
until, yes, correct. I'll send out an email follow-up just
Okay.
letting you know when it's been posted on the website.
Thank you.
It's not public yet, Mike, but if you would like a copy to start testing it out, then send me an email and I'll send you a copy of it.
Okay, great. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
if you want it available on the website for when you guys can all have it, I will email you when it's on there. But that probably won't be till early next week because it takes them a few days to post it.
Anything else from the group? Very good. Thanks to everybody for giving us an hour of your day.
Did
QCI.
you want to go over those last few boxes?
Yeah, QCIs, if you don't mind sticking around for a minute, if you have the time. If not, I understand.
I'll give you more of my time.
You're a sweetheart, Waldo. We'll
No,
give it
this
a
is good.
couple,
This is good
couple
stuff.
minutes for people
Yeah,
to.
we'll record it so it stays on the website. You can just jump in, Rogers.
Oh, okay. I guess anybody else who wants to stay is welcome, but I'm only asking the QCIs. Let's see. So I'll just be direct with you guys. Why is this information relevant, or how could it? I guess the point of the question I'm trying to ask is, how is this helpful?
This section in particular, I think would be helpful for me because, yeah, sometimes say like one reading is off, like the excess air is off. So then I don't know if I should, yeah, if I should consider that a pass or a fail. So this is kind of helping me just outline.
That'd be nice.
And
Yeah.
hopefully there's a lot of formulas built into this section. Hopefully it will show you what does pass and what doesn't pass, or what you should be looking for. Even if something does pass, it might show you there's opportunity to maybe make one appliance operate a little more efficient.
Right.
My only question is from what I understand, we don't do any cleaning tunes right now. So as far as like the oxygen and the O2 and stuff, why would we adjust those if we're not clean tuning them? If they, let's say they fail, they're not within the parameters. That makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go through these and fill them out, and then hopefully I can answer your questions as we're going.
Can't we use these as justification to do a tune and clean though? Is like during the audit, if we see that these numbers are off and we see that there's issues, are we able to use these as justification for a tune and clean?
Potentially, we are looking at that for only LIHEAP funds. So LIHEAP weather agency, but we don't, it's not a measure that we do on our DOE funding currently. And I don't anticipate getting approval for that yet.
Scientist.
Thank you, Anthony. Did that answer your question, Isaac?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. If you guys are okay, we'll start filling these boxes out and we'll see some of the features. So I'll go to our furnace.
I also wanted to point out that like if you have a new furnace being installed and it's also off when you measure it, that can be really helpful for you to get that contractor to come and fix it. That's outside of the tuning clean, just FYI.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So based on our combustion analysis here, Waldo, this might answer your question.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Is anybody with some HVAC technical experience notice anything that stands out with these numbers? Richard, are you still on this call?
I'm gonna go get him.
Still here. What
I
stands
think
out to
he's
you on
getting
this?
crews out.
On the fluid temp and that efficiency. Is that
Yeah.
supposed to be a 90%er? And if
Believe it or not, this is not a 90%er.
It's a mobile home furnace.
It's a mobile home furnace. I think Kurt knows what furnace this is. He figured it out.
the O2 is awful low.
Uh-huh. So, Isaac, this might answer your question, where maybe you could use this information to justify doing a clean and tune. because this furnace is not operating, I would say, ideally.
My only question on a mobile home furnace, how do you get them above the 300 mark?
For flue temperature.
Because if you measure them from the top of and like up on the roof, and you're in diluted air, you go right down through the flue, they rarely get above like 250.
What I do is I slide the outer sleeve up and take it down towards the furnace itself. If it's an 80.
We might need a real world demonstration of that sometime, Richard, if you
they're
have.
cast iron. We don't want to drill in that cast iron to get to the undiluted air in the furnace.
I've done that and used a plug in high temp.
A lot of times that bottom sleeve is corroded and you can't move it. So the best way is to do it from the roof.
Kyle, do you guys often see similar numbers to this on mobile home furnaces?
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll have some of your other numbers messed up as well. Like you're depending on real world problems of where you test from. Sometimes your excess air is going to be affected as well.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, it looks like the excess air, there's not enough, depending on where you put it. Like this thing looks like it's suffocating. So you might not have a good combustion air calculation going in there, but yeah.
Well, there's a couple of issues. Richard, you or Kyle, you guys can confirm this. The more oxygen percentage, or the higher this is, usually there's a higher nitrogen percentage as well, and that typically cools your flame or your exhaust temperature.
Yes.
So my concern would be is if right now this furnace seems to be running rich, so it's heavy in gas compared to how much oxygen it's got. If I change that mixture anymore, it's going to lower my flue temp even more, and I'm going to have condensation going on. So that's a concern, right?
That's when you check the orifices and make sure it's the right size.
Yeah. So this, I hope, helps you see some issues that might be going on with a combustion appliance. Let's look at the closeout combustion for the furnace. So we got CO air free of 30 parts per million. Our flue temp is 145.9. Our O2 is 18.8. Excess air is 94.4, or sorry, 79.4. Nope, I got that.
Excess air was 800.
895.2. Wow. And steady state efficiency. Am I seeing that anywhere? Right there. 79.4.
Some pretty big differences.
Pretty big differences, right? And I believe this was still the same furnace, despite the fact that the furnace actually ended up getting replaced at this particular job, but I don't know. Let's do the water heater. Nope. So Waldo, to kind of answer your question, I hope this is showing you based on the CO in the combustion that this appliance is passing, right?
Right.
But you've got all these other issues that are showing up. So technically you could, according to BPI standard, this furnace is working the way it should. But if we wanted to help improve some efficiency and get this thing burning the way it should, this hopefully tells you or gives you some direction of what to, how to hopefully resolve some of the issues that it's having.
It could also
Kinda to-
potentially help you spot if there maybe did the test wrong too. So
Yeah.
I want to clarify something I think I heard you say. So the CO is what determines if this passes or fails, but then the other tabs that are filling themselves in are just, they're more recommendations of what we can do to help improve the furnace, but really like
Correct.
as a QCI, when I'm reviewing this, the only thing that determines if it's a pass or fail on the audit review is the CO.
Correct.
Oh, the air free. Cool. Okay, no, that actually gives me, yeah, because sometimes I don't know. I that's a discussion we've had at our agency where I'll make these notes and the auditors will tell me like I don't really know what to do. You know, you told me my access error was out of range, and we'll kind of discuss it for a second. And I'm like, I don't know if you necessarily need to go back and do anything. It's more just like, what can we do with that information going forward? I don't, and I guess I don't know if I'm using that information right and portraying that right, I guess.
So it sounds like Yuka, I don't know if anybody else is doing this, but they're using this information to help them justify doing a clean and tune on a furnace.
Yeah, okay.
Is that correct, you guys?
We use it for all those things to make sure they do the test right. If it, you know, we're looking at that furnace, right? So I mean, we're not just looking at one number. He'll come in and look. I mean, Richard will come in and look at these, review these, and just look at the furnace and start asking questions and investigate. So, I mean, there's plenty of things we use it for. You know, to decide what's the best way to move forward.
And that's why I loved this so much that you guys had this section on your form. That's why I wanted to, I stole the idea from you.
I mean, be careful because I mean, then you're finding out, you know, well, this was happening on this day. I mean, there's just a ton of information, right?
Yeah.
Because you start asking and digging. And there's always something, you know. The kid wouldn't leave. I don't know, anyways.
So this house did have a gas oven as well, but it was not working. So we're going to leave that section blank. And I did document that on our form here, which I would expect any of you QCIs to do. Gas oven was not working at audit.
God. So I'd like to make a comment just because this information is good and we look at that information and we understand the problems, but we can't do anything because our hands are tied correctly because we're not supposed to use clean and tune on the new auditor, correct?
yeah, it's not a measure that we're allowed to do currently. I am in the process of approving or applying for our 5-year renewal with DOE, but having this information can help us justify changing that. But when
Okay,
it's
so
not
it's
a
more
place to
tracking.
really gather it. But this is something that we could more easily change with other funding sources, right? So if they're considering doing rebates for clean and tunes, that could help with this. So this information is really like if you're having an issue with the furnace, there is some avenue for justifying it based on some of the tests that you do. We can try to clear up that avenue the more information that we get. So
Through other programs, but not through the audit.
not currently, just because we haven't approved that as a measure with DOE yet. I am considering it, but
I just wanted to make sure that was right. So this is more like a tracking, because I'm very aware of like the O2s and stuff, but our hands are tied right now. So
in your case, Kurt, you're using this more for the CO portion then.
Yeah, but if you have someone installing a furnace, you can also use this to justify that they need to go back and fix that. Because it needs to, yeah. So So that's still useful in new installations. So
We've also used it when clients have called back to say something's wrong with their furnace and that we caused it. We can get in here and evaluate and say, there's no way at the
Yeah,
time of QCI
you've got a document
that caused
showing.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just nice to have it something documented at that time. Yeah, no, there's no way we could have done that.
yeah.
I actually really like this form so far. I like the idea of being able to do this. I understand, like, right now I like the idea of tracking it, honestly. I really like this form. It's given us a lot more detail. I think it's going to be helpful for everybody, quite honestly.
Thank you, Seth. To be honest, I was worried that a lot of you would feel it's too redundant. You didn't want to fill in this information in multiple places, but like Tina just said, in a way, it's helping you cover yourself. You're showing, I checked these things. This is what it was at audit. This is what it was at QCI. There's no way that this problem was caused because of anything that weatherization did.
Right. I just like the idea, it's going to help us improve, number one. And in order for us to improve, we've got to be able to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like your form so far.
Well, thank you.
Well, I think where, it's helped us out a lot too, is if somebody mistakenly puts information in from wrong place, you're working on too many things, there's all sorts of things that it's helped with, just besides tracking the things. Sometimes we can tell if you've got the wrong form in there or somebody's just misplaced something. So, I mean, there's lots of things that it's been an advantage for us. So, but the thing is, a lot of it, this stuff goes to Richard. In our case, stuff goes to Richard, goes through. I'm entering a lot of this at the end for us just to have that proof. It's not that it's being filled out, all the way along. But anyway. As far as let's hope we're in this situation.
All right, we'll fill out this worst case draft section really quick so we can get you guys on your way today. So here's our audit form. We can see our worst case CAS pressure in this case was negative 0.4. Now, once you fill in, sorry, I didn't say that before. Once you fill in the outdoor temperature on here, just like the worst case draft form, it's going to autofill down here in this section what your minimal acceptable vent pressure is. And then once you put in what you get on your test, it'll tell you whether or not you pass over yonder.
Hey, Matt, I do have a comment on the other side of kind of what Seth was saying. In our files, we have pre-blower doors and final blower doors. We have pre-tapes, combustion tapes. We have final combustion tapes. We have pre-worst case draft testing forms and final worst case drafting forms that tell us all of this information, and they tell us whether they pass or they fail. So, I mean, this is kind of redundant information in my mind, but that we're re-entering that we already have in our file.
That was what my worry was, is you guys are going to look at it that way. But the reason I feel like it's useful is it's forcing you to look at the documents. In a lot of cases, I'm looking at, when we're monitoring, I'm looking at these worst case draft forms, for example, and let's just say this vent pressure here is, instead of saying negative 1.3, it says positive 1.3, but then you've got pass checked off as the appliance is passing. Well, if that vent pressure is positive, that appliance is not passing. So either a clerical error was made there, or the appliance is failing. It's just an extra check. But I get that it's redundant. It's
The
meant
other
to be.
reason that I could also throw in there is that you can look at it all in one place. So I know, like, yes, there's these other things, but having to pull up like 800 tabs on a tablet or something, this helps. And then the other piece is that I'd rather take a QCI form for me to load in and put a whole bunch of data into a computer so then I can collect it to like make it easier for us to justify and like pull data in of like, oh, this is what's happening, than me having to go through separate combustion tapes and comparing, like, and they're all in different formats and they're all scanned differently. Like, so having it in here also is helpful, not only on your guys' front, that you could even take this data and just only reference this cell and put it into Excel, or it also helps us too. But it's not required necessarily. Are we requiring them to fill out this form, Rogers?
As much as they can, yes.
Okay, then yeah, it is a little redundant, but at least you don't have to pull up all of the different, you only have to pull them up once instead of multiple times when you're doing a QCI. But
do we have to put the red information in our central repository on this slide?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's not a discrepancy. It's not something you do a callback for. It's not anything like that. It's just it's highlighting to you, you know, this appliance is not necessarily combusting at its as effectively as it could be.
I agree with
Its
Kyle
ideal ranges.
a little bit, but then I agree with Seth. I think it's good, but it's redundant.
Yeah, I realize
Yeah,
that.
I do like the idea of it too. I can see that there's a lot of really great benefits. Something that I struggle with a lot. I'm like trying to figure out, and I think I've brought this up before a couple different times, is how do you get all these documents to basically share information? Like, I'm wondering if that would be making your worst case into a spreadsheet and making the QCI inspection form like a workbook. So all this information is just auto-filling in itself and not, I do see that there's lots of positives to this. It does scare me, but I do see the benefits of it. It really just worries me because it's just the time, it's just the redundancy, but at the same time, I do see the benefits of it. So that is I'm like stuck in the middle.
yeah, well, though I have come to like the way that you guys have been putting your files together in a workbook. I didn't like it at first because I think there should probably be a summary page somewhere to do what you're saying.
Mhm.
But I like that you guys are doing that, and that is something that I could we could at least offer as an opportunity for other people. It wouldn't be a requirement, but that I could at least like offer this as a resource so that because everybody's been pretty much asking, like, can we have all these forms in one file? In one file. And the best way to potentially do that is kind of how you guys did it. And so, like, so I think the more that we're figuring this out, the better we're gonna get. But
we're working towards that, but it's a slow process.
Oh no, yeah, I get it, and I'm not trying to say anything on you guys. I'm trying to be patient because I know this stuff is complicated. I know it's not as easy as me just saying it. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah, I feel like definitely as far as like there's just more efficient ways that we can probably do this. I just don't have the capacity or knowledge to know how to put it all together. I just understand like the angle sounds really attractive, I guess. But no, I hear you. Like I said, I'm not knocking down on your form. That's not what I'm trying to do by any means. I know that this will be really beneficial. Like you said, it helps us just take a harder look at this information and hopefully just do something with it instead of just collecting it, right?
Yeah.
No, so I get you. Again, I'm not trying to knock on you in any way. I think this is a great form. I like the improvements.
If you do have a knock, let me have it, because I want to improve also. So I want to make this as beneficial to all of you as it can be.
Nothing right now besides it being repetitive. Really much more than that. No, I understand that this is a good tool.
It may be repetitive, but it's also a way to double check yourself again. Like, because what I've found is there's times when, you know, even I've checked things and thought I had everything in order and I didn't. and for me to actually have even this part of the form to fill it out, there's no doubt right there. If I've got all the numbers filled out, I've got it. So
Well,
in
and
a way, it's a good
for
thing.
you, right? Like, you don't have to compare all these different things and use your brain to like kind of look between them. But yeah.
Yeah, it's all right there. I can see, the difference between audit, production, QCI. I know that I've got everything. I really like the form.
Yeah, I love the idea of putting all this information in one place. I guess it's just the repetitive of how many different places you put like a blower door number. You're putting it in a QCI form, you're putting it in the BWR, you're putting it in the ASHRAE form, you're putting it. So certain things start to add up where I'm like, I'm putting this in so many different places. That's more of what I'm knocking on, not this form exactly. It's just the process of how much information gets repeated and how many times you have to manually put this in, I guess. I'm not knocking on this form particularly just because of that. It's just
I get you, Waldo. And
yeah,
trust me, I do have a long-term goal to help or to hopefully consolidate a lot of things into, let's say, one Google document. So all this information that you're saying, you enter it once into a box and it transfers that information to all the other forms that you need it to be on.
Right.
I do have a long.
If you could just do like a site sketch, you put your window in there and it fills out your 803, your audit.
That's big dreams, big dreams.
Draws the house for you.
That's definitely possible. I just don't have the knowledge or capacity right now to know how to do that.
I'll be happy when we get some forms that just reference what Rogers said. And then we can move to like a program that will do it all for us, that we don't have to figure it out. Yeah.
Yep.
Was there any other questions on this form that we can answer before we let you guys go?
I'm good. I just wanted to say thanks. And
no, thank you for the feedback. You and Waldo and Kyle, Kurt, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is recorded, right?
This is being recorded, yeah. So you guys are
I just
welcome
need
to.
the clip of Turner saying I was right. I just want to save it.
Yeah. Don't worry. I was actually gonna edit the part where he was wrong, just to clarify. Hey, Turner's wrong. So just let it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too. Yeah. If there's no other questions, I'll catch up with you guys later.
Thank you.
Again, if you want me to send you a copy of this, just shoot me an email.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.